that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, we have a breaking news. Russia has condemned European Union plans to discuss the possible direct confiscation of frozen Russian assets, calling the move a theft and violation of the UN Charter. The Russian Foreign Ministry has accused Brussels of displaying a cynical attitude towards international law and mocked the EU's reported proposal to issue zero-coupon bonds backed by seized Russian funds, saying such instruments will one day be exhibited in one of the museums of Russophobia. Now we move on and we stay in the region. Belgium's Prime Minister Bart de Wever has warned he will block the European Union's proposed 140 billion reparation loan for Ukraine unless other member states agree to share financial and legal risks tied to frozen Russian assets. Speaking ahead of an EU leaders summit in Brussels, de Wever has said that Belgium wants full mutualization of risks, financial guarantees from partners, and collective action to harness Russian sovereign funds held across Europe. Belgium holds the largest share of Russia's immobilized central bank assets, which are managed by Brussels-based clearinghouse Euroclear, and it fears the scheme could expose it to major legal liabilities. The loan plan is strongly backed by Germany, France, and Baltic states, and it aims to provide fresh funding for Kyiv as the war drags on. Let's listen into what he has said.
The only ones, Euroclear is the only financial institution that offers the windfall profits to Ukraine. We know that there are vast amounts of Russian money in other countries who have always been silent about this. If we move, we must move all together. That's European solidarity. If these three demands, which are quite reasonable, I think, are met, then we could go forward. If not, I will do everything in my power at the European level, also at the national level, politically and legally, to stop this decision.
Many countries.
Well, I'm looking forward to the discussion on the immobilized assets, not the frozen assets. There's a big difference, the sovereign assets. There's the idea of confiscating them to give them to Ukraine. I'm looking for the legal basis for this decision. This is not a detail. Even during the Second World War, immobilized assets were never touched. So this is a very important step if we would like to take it. If we want to give them to Ukraine, we have to do it all together. If not, Russian retaliation might only hit Belgium. That's not very reasonable. We're a small country and retaliation can be very hard. They might confiscate all kinds of monies of Western banks in Russia, confiscate the European-owned companies in Russia. Look what happened to Google. This could happen to every company of European origin in Russia. So if we want to go forward on this, the risks are high and we have to do it all together.
Now for this discussion, we welcome Gleb Borukhov. He's an international affairs expert, joins us live from Moscow. Thank you very much, Gleb, for joining us again. Good to see you. Gleb, now looking at EU Leaders Summit and de Wever, what he said about full mutualization of risks, should the EU collectively bear legal and financial liabilities tied to these Russian assets, or should each member state manage its own exposure? What are the risks? Yes.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Amazing. So this is a very very debated question because as it was rightly mentioned, the question here is legal. It's not political. It's actually legal details. Legally, there is no basis for confiscating or appropriating the assets. So that's why individual member states are so rightly concerned about possible repercussions from Russia, because we should not forget that Russia, European companies have invested a lot since the beginning of 2000s, and they have big exposure to Russia, both in terms of banks and financial system, but also in terms of real physical equity assets which are physically located there. So as a retaliation, Russia can certainly take drastic measures by confiscating those assets. Russia so far has not been very active in this process, although it has shown some precedent already. So yes, the concern of European countries is quite well-founded in that sense. But that's these concerns only show that there is no unity within the European Union. So European Union is ultimately failing as an institution to represent its own interests. We've seen this many times, and this war is another good example of that. So there is no unified opinion and policy which is supported by all member states. So every member state feels vulnerable, and because they're ultimately not protected by the European Union, because the European Union doesn't have an army, doesn't have its own foreign policy as such. So yeah, basically we just the comments that we've heard so far are just direct results of the failure of the European Union to act as one unified body.
And Gleb, as you rightfully mentioned that, EU's unity and credibility in supporting Ukraine is not crumbling, but there's a lot of cracks. We see even about location of trilateral or bilateral summit being very contentious, and now this too. So how is this stance risking further about EU's unity and credibility in supporting Ukraine? Do you think there is some kind of tiredness in supporting Ukraine?
Sorry, could you repeat this? Is there some kind of what?
Are there?
Yes.
Yes, tiredness.
Could you repeat your last question, please?
Yes. Do you think some countries are tired of supporting or keep on giving funds to Ukraine?
Absolutely. Yes. Well, in fact, I would say probably most countries, except for the fanatics within the European Union, are tired of the situation, because ultimately the conflict is completely artificial. It pursues no real economic or social interests of the European Union. If anything, it actually goes against all of these interests. So the ongoing continuation of the armed conflict is a direct result of political maneuvering and geopolitical policies, which are not backed up by any economic or social or any other objectives. So that said, it's quite obvious that a lot of countries within the European Union are not aligned with the overall strategy to continue the war and continue the absolutely useless funding of the Ukraine, of supplying arms to the Ukraine. Yeah, I'm not saying that you shouldn't fund the Ukraine, but I'm saying that supplying arms is a completely wasted business, which puts additional pressures on everyone's budgets. So in that sense, yeah, this is exactly what we've been seeing so far. I mean, we have a small coalition within European Union, which are openly opposing the policies. We have a silent number of countries who are just, staying on the sidelines, not willing to take any exposure. But also we have, a number of countries which form the active bloc.
Yes. And
so yeah, basically that said, there is no unity, and this unity will never be achieved under the current structure of the EU, where the EU is actually formed by independent countries.
Yes, indeed, there is a fatigue in some countries in Europe towards Ukraine. And lastly, Gleb, what are the potential consequences for long-term consequences if European banks do unfreeze these Russian assets? Don't you think there would be the trust towards these banks would be eroded?
This is one of the key concerns. I think that the bankers and the regulators and people who are professionally and economically involved are having, that these unilateral matters will undermine the trust of other international players, which they deposit into European financial systems. Whether this is really going to be so or not, that's debatable, but for certain, this is not going to do any good to the credibility of the European system and credibility of European institutions. Now, we need to understand that China as a major player is heavily involved with Europe. India is also involved to a certain extent. So whether, a possible unilateral expropriation of Russian assets will send some kind of, alert signals to these other players, this is to be seen. But certainly, I think the world is treating the Western financial system with a big caution right now.
Yes, thank you very much, Gleb Borukov, for joining us as an international affairs expert all the way from Moscow. Thank you. Now we move on to our next news.